Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social podcast. Today I am once again joined by Issam and we're going to discuss the fourth round of the UCI Cyclocross World Cup 2022-2023 which took place in Maasmechelen. Issam, thank you for being here once again.
Yes, thank you.
As usual, we'll start by talking about the men's race, but before we get into the action we want to have your attention for the following. As you all know, the World Cup is heading back to Spain this year for the first time in over a decade. We are proud to be working with the Benidorm Cyclocross World Cup organization in order to promote the event. It's going to be a great event in the downtown of Benidorm and the course will be very all-round, including technical sections, stairs, sand and a big hill. Make sure to witness the history in Benidorm and use the code CXSocial, so CXSocial all in capital letters for 20% discount on your ticket. Another new race on the calendar was the race in Maasmechelen. Sweeck, we all know the story yesterday. He was very upset by the way Iserbyt and Michael van Toerenhout had ridden the race and he started eager. He had something to prove and he took the lead right from the getaway. Kuhn was in his wheel but he crashed in the first downhill of the day. That was without any serious injuries, but it did mean that he had to start his race all the way from the back, 45 seconds down on the leaders. He would eventually still ride to a 7th place, but his chances of a podium or victory went up in flames. Sweeck led the pack for the first couple of laps, but nobody was able to break away. There was a big group, and from that big group, eventually Sweeck attacked. Iserbyt and Van Toerenhout were able to follow him. Iserbyt had already had a puncture, but it didn't affect him too much. It did affect Van der Haar more, because Van der Haar had a puncture as well. And then he needed to change bike again, because he was riding with too low tire pressure and was scared to have another puncture. With Van der Haar in the background, the three leaders looked to be on and gone into the distance. However, as Iserbyt attacked just before the halfway point of the race, he made a crucial mistake. He hit a rock in a corner which was slightly downhill and crashed. Sweeck immediately saw the opportunity to keep the pace high whilst Iserbyt was down to 9th. Van Toerenhout tried to follow Sweeck but was not able to do so. Sweeck from there on went on to control the race and even a puncture in the last lap could not stop him. He won his first ever Cyclocross World Cup here and in the background there was a pretty entertaining battle for the 2nd place. Lars van der Haar and Iserbyt were together for a long time. The two riders had found themselves at the back end of the top 10 after a puncture and crash respectively, but worked their way up into 2nd. They never came close to Sweeck, even though Sweeck had a puncture in the final lap, but eventually it was Lars van der Haar who managed to drop Iserbyt on one of the more hilly sections in the first part of the lap and claimed the 2nd place. Iserbyt took 3rd. Sweeck taking the win, I would almost say finally, despite that the season is not underway that long, but we have said it a couple of times already, it was just coming. It was imminent that the win of Sweeck was coming at any point and now he finally gets it. In my opinion, fully deserved today, despite there being a case to make by some people that, well, Iserbyt crashed, Van der Haar punctured, but I will say it, I think it's a deserved win.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a lot of things happened in the race, but I think in the end that Sweeck took initiative from the start, tried to, not get away, but just be ahead of everybody at the start and in the first couple of laps. And, he looked very good today. And he had just one goal today, and that was to win. Obviously, the others were a little bit more unfortunate than he was, but in the end, he just escaped with that puncture as well. So I think he got his fair share of bad luck as well, but just at the right moment. And I think in the end, you can just conclude that Sweeck definitely deserved to win here. And quite surprising that somebody with the career he has already, a Belgian champion, obviously, that is only his first World Cup victory. But yeah, it's definitely one he's going to cherish after the race in Rudderford yesterday.
Yeah, he looked strong as he has been doing almost the entire season. He was in control after that crash, but already before the crash of Iserbyt, he was definitely not having any of it. We saw in the races earlier this season that sometimes he would be prone to the team tactics by Paul Sauze, but he already learned from that. And where in some races he had one moment in which he was at the back, for instance in Fayetteville, today in the first half of the race there were no moments where he was in a dangerous position. He led the pack without doing too much effort, but that meant he was in a very safe position. One, there could be nobody pulling team tactics on him, And two, on a course like Maasmechelen, you need to be in the front 2-3 positions all the time. It's a course where the big pack just gets pulled apart on all these off-cambers and corners, and you just need to be at the front, because else you're just wasting energy coming back of a small gap every corner, and that will eventually break you. Sweeck did that perfectly and then launched an attack when he felt comfortable with the course, knew how things were going, could see a bit how the others were doing. That is maybe even what caused Iserbyt to make the mistake. Iserbyt in the post-race interview was blaming it a bit on a rock on the course and the course being too dangerous. We'll come and talk about that a bit later, the course, but Iserbyt only has himself to blame for that crash. He's the only one who went down in that corner, and let's not go into too much details on the course, but if you're the only one crashing there, the rock might have been a bit dangerous, but yeah, there's a reason he's the only one that crashed. He made a mistake, and then Sweeck takes advantage of that, which is his complete right. Iserbyt just lost the race, or the opportunity of getting a race win there himself, and I think without the crash that Sweeck would still have won, but that's an open discussion.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that the crash itself, it was kind of similar to, not on the same place obviously, because Herman's crash was a little earlier in the race at lap 1 already, but I think that if you just look at the way, the crash occurred for Iserbyt, it was we didn't see that many people crash there, so I think that to blame one crash entirely on the complete course, you already did that lap a couple of times, so I think he should just take some blame upon himself, and it's not always going to be party time for Paul Sousa. This time it's Laurens Sweeck that takes the win, and should just focus on what's coming next in Koppenberg.
Iserbyt said it himself, he was taking risks because he was attacking, and then sometimes you make a mistake, and there's absolutely no problem with that. It will happen, even the best make mistakes, and today is just the perfect example of that. So if Iserbyt wants to blame someone for the crash, he should blame himself. On the course, I do think there is a valid point to make. Lars van der Haar himself, after the race, also said it, too many rocks, don't think this is World Cup worthy. Iserbyt saying the same, too many rocks, it's not worthy to organize a World Cup here. The Belgian commentators were defending it, saying that they should have eye for the organizers who put effort in to organize a race in a Belgian province that doesn't organize too many cross races. It's irrelevant that this race is in a province that doesn't have too many cross races. There's already so many races in a tiny country as Belgium. And in general, it doesn't matter. Yes, people put effort in. Yes, sponsors put money down to organize a cross, and that's beautiful. But on some places, maybe it's better to not organize a cross. Van der Haar and Iserbyt think that this is a venue where you shouldn't be hosting one. Van der Haar saying not a race at all. He's saying if it's raining, it turns into BLS, and there's no way you can ride there. Iserbyt saying it's okay for an exact cross, not for a World Cup. What's your thought on it, Issam?
When we saw or at least when I saw the course in the beginning, and I think you were also quite skeptical about the course in the beginning of it, I think I even used the word disappointing in the preview. It's difficult to say. I think that in a way, obviously, I can understand that from a sponsor perspective, and in the way like they were saying that, promoting the region and stuff, but it shouldn't really be part of a World Cup. A World Cup is, as it says, the name, the World Cup. It needs to be more than only promoting a region. It is the embodiment of the sport, and it's the most important classification. So you really need to make sure that every race has a certain standard. So you won't have the critique that we have right now. I think personally that with a couple of adjustments, you can make a good race out of it, but to say that I want to see this every year in a World Cup for the next 5 years, let's say, is maybe a bit too much. I think that is a good race overall in a way, but it's far from as Iserbyt said in a way, it doesn't give me the vibe of a World Cup, and I think that is the issue mainly. I think that if you want to make the World Cup the best competition and the best overall in cyclocross, then you need to make sure that the races are also up to that standard. And I feel that is a bit lacking in Maasmechelen.
There's no problem with a race wanting to promote a region in the World Cup. Val di Sole does the same, but if you're going to promote the region, find a suitable location for it, and this clearly isn't one. It's probably a very fun course to ride because the onboard lap seemed super exciting. It seemed to have a nice flow, but the surface, it doesn't seem good for a World Cup. In the preview, I think I said it's not the same as BLS, but the more I saw it today, the more I think that there are similarities between BLS and Maasmechelen. It's no coincidence that there are so many punctures in the men's race. Joris Nieuwenhuis had a very good race result taken away from him due to one. In the youth races, many punctures as well. I think Emil Verstringen had one when he was fighting for the win. Oliver Akers had one when he was fighting for the podium. Many punctures. It's just not good enough, so you need to find a venue that's suitable to organize a cross without having all these punctures, because it just ruins races and there's a lot on the line in the World Cup, more than in an exact cross. But I don't think that if you are incapable of organizing a cross due to the surface in a World Cup, it should also be unsuitable to organize a cross in general. It's just better to not race on a super rocky underground. So should we come back here? I don't think so, unless they either work a lot over the summer and take away these rocks, plant some nice grass over it, build a very good buffer, change the location or whatever. But it did look beautiful, that's the positive thing I can say, but it looked more like a place for a ride from a theme park or something. Build a roller coaster there and you have a ride like the Baron in the Efteling, but not for a Cyclocross World Cup or race in general. We can't forget Lars van der Haar in all of this. I asked you about Iserbyt. Do you think he could have won without the crash? What do you think about Van der Haar? Could he have won without the puncture? Because when Sweeck attacked, he was on the back foot due to that puncture.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely cost him some energy, but the same can be said for Iserbyt. When he, crashed, he had to chase Van der Haar for a big amount of time, and I think for a couple of laps he was not really on his wheel. Eventually, when he arrived, he tried to take the lead, and immediately the gap grew even more. So I think that, a case could be made for both riders. For Van der Haar, it was, I think, a bit more crucial because it was at the start, so you lose a little bit more positions on a parcours like this. A lot of single track, difficult to overtake, and if the pace doesn't drop, it's quite difficult. So I think that, it cost him, but I think that the highest achievable for Van der Haar today was in second with the Sweeck, the way he was riding today.
For Van der Haar, there was more in it in terms of result and for Iserbyt. We saw at the end of the race that Van der Haar was fresher. Of course, we can't forget that Iserbyt crashed. He said his knees were bleeding and that they were both hurting throughout the race. Let's hope that everything is fine for Iserbyt. But I do think, or at least based on this weekend, that at the moment, for the past weeks, I've had the feeling Iserbyt was the strongest, but this weekend that's changed. I feel Van der Haar and Sweeck today, but also yesterday, were stronger than Iserbyt.
I think overall, if you look at the weekend, I think there is some sort of a decline in the form of Iserbyt. I think that Iserbyt in Ruddervoorde, he won, but a lot had to happen in the race to give him to eventually see him in that position of winning in Ruddervoorde. And I think that today it was also visible that he was not superior over the rest. He was good, but I don't think that he was at his best form. And it might be possible that there is a change in hierarchy at the moment, that Van der Haar, he looks better week by week, and obviously the championships are coming, European championships. He said that is going to be one of his goals this season so far, so he wants to be good there, and it looks like it's going to be all in place when he goes to the championship. So it's definitely good to see, but I think for Iserbyt, I wouldn't be surprised if he can turn it up for the next couple of races and get in the groove again and get some wins again under his belt.
Yeah, by no means this was the last win of Eli Iserbyt, or yesterday, in fact, his last win. We will see more from Eli Iserbyt, and I don't think that it's actually a decline on the end of Iserbyt. I think it's more of an improvement on the end of Van der Haar and Sweeck. Sweeck, we discussed it in Tabor, that he had a very packed schedule coming back, racing in Ardoi, not being super fresh in Tabor. He was already strong before. I don't want to go over it all again, but in Fayetteville when he came close was already strong in Molenbeek and Waterloo, but failed due to the bad start. Van der Haar also had his share of bad luck and an illness when he came back from the Waterloo World Cup. So definitely an improvement on their end in form is at least my feeling that I'm taking away from this, and they are definitely at least at the same level as Iserbyt now. It will be interesting to see on the Koppenberg if Lars van der Haar can fight with Eli Iserbyt. If he can do it there, then I am putting down Lars van der Haar for the European title next week in Namur. If Iserbyt manages to take the win there, I think it will be a very interesting battle still, but we'll definitely learn more for the European Championships on the Koppenberg. Let's look at our entire top 10 then. Laurens Sweeck took that win ahead of European champion Lars van der Haar and World Cup leader Eli Iserbyt. 4th place went to Maaike van Toerenhout ahead of Niels Vandeputte and Kevin Kuhn. 7th place for Quinten Hermans ahead of Jens Adams, Toon van der Bos, and then the 10th place is for Ryan Kamp. Let's start by talking about Niels Vandeputte from these names. I think he put in a very good result today. Of course, already scored well in some of these smaller crosses, but not really able to mark himself in the bigger races. Had a couple of top 10s, but mostly anonymously in the back end of the top 10. Today, 5th place. Very strong showing. Do you think it's due to form or anything else?
It is a parkour that suits him a little bit. It's technical in a way, but also fast. He can get around there quite good, but he's also very technical, and I think that really helped him today as well. But I think that the shape is also getting together a little bit, because Van der Putte has the tendency in a race to start very well, be at the front, and then just 2-3 laps before the end of the race he kind of slows down for him, and then in the last lap he's also again able to just push everything out of it. And I think today it was more of a consistent race. He was able to be in that group with Kuhn, and also later on Hermans. Van Toerenhout was there as well. Eventually Van Toerenhout was the one that got away from that group, but he finished very well in the 5th place, and I think that is a good moment to have a very good form in a way.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's definitely down to an improvement in terms of form for Vandeputte. And we can say the same for Kevin Kuhn, the Swiss champion, put in a super strong race. Maybe did a bit too much, got a bit excited. At some point I even thought he could potentially end on the podium because he was closing on Van der Haar and Iserbyt. Just fell short in the end, but super strong. 6th place for him is definitely a result to go forward with. He's doing super well recently, and I really look forward to seeing him at the European Championships next week in Namur. I hope he can get a top 10, and I think that should be realistic, but I think or hope he can do even more, maybe a top 5. It's great to see a Swiss rider do so well again, and if he can keep developing, don't forget he's only 24. There's definitely more progression in him, and that should hopefully do him well, and that he can make a couple of more steps and even get a podium in a Belgian classified cross. Would be amazing to see a Swiss rider there, and it's definitely what Swiss cross need, because I remember the days, no, I don't remember them because I wasn't alive then, but in the 90s the epicentrum of cross was really in Switzerland, and the Belgians went to Switzerland to race, and they raced for the Swiss francs there, and now they are completely vanished, and part of it is due to the Belgians just centralizing the sport, but it's super great to see them back, and hopefully they can use this to spark some new young talent and regain a bit of that cross feeling in Switzerland. Kuhn ended just ahead of his teammate Quinten Hermans after a recovery ride. Hermans was lucky with the low pace in the first laps, which enabled him to get a top 10, but 7th should have been 8th if it wasn't for a puncture of Joris Nieuwenhuis. Super strong race by Joris Nieuwenhuis, racing his first World Cup of the season. The rider from Baloise Trek. We said how excited we were that he was back in the field. I have to say, I was still surprised that he was so far at the front. What about you, Issam?
I think we had reason to be surprised. I mean, even Sven Nys was surprised about the performance, and he was like, this is not really parkour that he expected him to do well already, and he said that that we can still that we can look forward to the races that are coming from his side. And to be honest, it was up until that point when he disappeared from the front group, or the group with Kuhn and Van der Putte, it looked very, very good, and he didn't really need that many races. So it's it's really good to see and promising for himself. And I think that, that I don't want to put too much pressure on it, and I don't expect too much from it now. But I think that if we go into December, we might see him go for top fives consistently, I think. But I think that for now, it's still a bit too soon to expect it from him week in, week out. I think that it will come, and he will definitely be somebody to watch out for in the month December.
It was a super strong ride by him, but I need to add that he does have some extra freshness over the other riders. He did not make the trip to the States. He was in fact not racing at all. And Jesse and I said this was all of a plan for next year, that he just wants points for a favorable starting position next year. But I don't really believe that. That's more of downplaying the expectations and all the pressure around it. But we know how talented he is. That doesn't just disappear. Last year when he did cross with DSM in Gieten, I recall him being at the back end of the top 10, ultimately falling short in the final lap. But he got a top 10 at the European Championships even, I think. So they definitely had some expectations. And this is still above those expectations. But let's keep in mind he's a bit fresher. And once he settles into a rhythm and gets a bit of tiredness, his results might drop a little bit. But the talent is definitely still there. Let's go and talk about the women's race then. We had the fastest start for Helene Clauzel. However, it was quickly Pieterse who took over, and she upped the pace. At the end of the first lap, Pieterse jumped the barriers and opened a small gap. Van Anrooy closed this gap together with Fem van Empel, and we went to a situation with 4 leaders. Pieterse, Fem van Empel, Sherin van Anrooy and Ceyin del Carmen Alvarado. Alvarado, just like yesterday, was on the yo-yo of the leading group, and her yo-yo snapped. She was dropped and was quickly overtaken by Betsma, who looked to come close. Betsma, however, never was able to close the gap, as Sherin van Anrooy, who had a very strong second part of the course all day long, upped the pace. Pieterse sat in and let Fem van Empel do some of the work, but the 3 leaders went into the final lap together. It was an action-packed final lap. There were many position changes, jockeying for positions, 3 wide at some points, but ultimately Pieterse knew what she had to do. She had to try and be first as they went towards the sand section, so she could jump the barriers first and sprint all out from there. Pieterse looked to be able to pull it off, but past the mirror section, the corner after, she was just a bit too lazy on the acceleration or tired, and she was overtaken by Fem van Empel. Fem van Empel stretched out a couple of lengths through the technical section and made the difference in the sand pit. Van Empel, who was the strongest in the sand pit all day long, stretched out the gap there and was really the bee, as they say in Belgium. She was gone and claimed the 4th victory in a row in the World Cup, ahead of Pieterse and Sherin van Anrooy. Once again, the World Cups in the women's side don't let us down, Issam. They were super entertaining, but in the end it was business as usual this season.
Business as usual, yeah. I mean, yeah. If you go with Van Empel into a last lap, you need to be way better. Otherwise, it's not you don't have a chance. And I think that we went into the same scenario again. This time with Van Anrooy, that played a role as well. But I think that in the end, Van Empel was able to be at the right places at the right moment. And at the crucial moment, she was at the front. And I think that kind of lacked today a little bit with Pieterse. But overall, I think as well that just Van Empel was just a little bit better. It was visible with the way she rode and just in general. It looked better the way Van Empel was riding than the way Pieterse and Van Anrooy were going around the track. And I think that in the end, the best won again. And that we're slowly but surely going in some sort of a pattern of Van Empel in these races, and I hope that we can break that pattern quite soon. Not for nothing against her, but just for the racing in general. I think it will be interesting to see another winner.
Yeah, it would be, and I think Pieterse had an opportunity today. She said herself that she thought hopping the barriers wouldn't give her much of an advantage. They were super bumpy and short after a corner. But in the first lap, we could see that it did give her a small opening. I think 2 or 3 seconds. It would have been super interesting to see in the final lap if she was able to hop them first, if Fem van Empel could still close it. It would have been possible, but super hard. We know Fem van Empel has a crazy sprint and acceleration, so she could have maybe been able to pull off, but unfortunately we were not allowed to see that because Fem van Empel knew that she had to prevent that situation as it would be super dangerous. But Pieterse, I don't know if it was tiredness or a bit of laziness that eventually caused her to let Fem van Empel retake the lead. She tried it a couple of times, which I understand, because there was this super steep hill. She wanted to try and ride that. She did it one lap and almost made it to the top. We saw in her pre-ride video that she was almost able to make it to the top as well. So I think that's why she wasted a lot of energy early on in the lap trying to take the lead. And then she tried it again because she knew that she still had to be in the lead. Is it then a mistake to try and gamble on 2 cards? I don't necessarily think so. I do think that if it was not tiredness and the lackiness, that it's really a mistake to not come out of the saddle and accelerate out of the corner past the mirrors. If it was tiredness, then we have to conclude Fem van Empel was the strongest. But I don't think it was that much of tiredness, because after that section we still saw that there was a lot of fighting spirit left in Pieterse. There was definitely still a kick in it. She was fighting until the line and fought all the way through. Eventually lost it in the sand section because Fem van Empel is a very good sand rider. That's at least how I think about it. Pieterse really lost it there. Without that, I'm not saying Pieterse would have won, but we would have seen a very interesting battle that would have gone all the way to the line.
I think that's fair to say. I think that Pieterse at the moment just lacks the couple of percent to really bring up that fight to Van Empel the way we want to see it. I think that eventually it was just a matter of Van Empel being a little bit better. Tactically, obviously, there were some like you said, maybe it was, I wouldn't say laziness, but just being very easy about that, and
yeah, maybe a lack of awareness is maybe a better word than laziness.
Yeah, and urgency as well. I mean, one thing that I don't understand is if you know that the barriers are something that you are able to make something happen, why doing it in the first lap? Because I've said it already, Van Empel as well, when in Fayetteville with the barriers. If you know that you're able to jump those barriers while the others are not, it's a weapon. Keep it for yourself. Wait till the last 2 laps and then use it. If you use it now, it's just at the first lap you're just saying, hey, look what I can do. Just make sure that you're ahead of me in that turn, and then I cannot really get that much advantage out of it. And I think that those are just kind of killer things that will come with time, or eventually you will know how to play those cards a little bit better. And I think that there are going to be quite some races that are coming forward, that are coming up, that will be quite interesting between these two, and maybe even Van Anrooy and someone else in the mix as well.
But how much of a hidden weapon is it really for Pieterse? By now everybody knows she's capable of doing it, and if you have a competent staff around you, which I do believe Fem van Empel has at Pauwelsauze, these staff members will be checking out what Pieterse is doing during the course reckon on the day of the race, or for World Cups even the day before. In normal circumstances, that is, because yesterday the barriers weren't there during the course practice, but then again, during the course practice today, you should have seen Pieterse being able to do it, and she is able of doing it, and it doesn't really change the game plan. She was hopping them every lap, it saves her a bit of energy. And yes, maybe she could have surprised Fem van Empel, but then it would have been very amateuristic on the end of Van Empel to be fooled like that.
Why I say it, and I can remember there was a championships, I think it was under 23, and it was at that time the Belgians were learning how to jump those barriers. It was the men category, and the under 23s were able to jump them already. Who was the trainer again? I forgot about that, but how it went, it was those guys, they knew how to jump the barriers and they were training on it, but then with the reckoning they didn't jump them, just to kind of not show their skills. And then when the race started, it's kind of it's a mindfuck in a way, because they were not able to jump them when you saw them on the reckoning, and they were just jumping off their bikes and doing it running. And then in the race itself, they're jumping the barriers. It can be a mind game. If you utilize it well, it can actually it can help you in a way. But it's different scenarios, different times at the moment as well. And I think, but I just feel that if you know that you're capable of doing something that another might not be able to do, it's best to just keep it for yourself, not use it in the beginning. We've seen it with Vandeputte many times that a certain hill he was not able to go over it in the beginning laps, but he was just, taxating in a way, okay, last lap I will be able to ride till the top and then I will go away. And those kind of things, I think that will come, and maybe not even, there will be someone else that will use that. So yeah, but that's just my take on it, huh?
Yeah, I mean, if you go all in, that is of course possible, and then you need to go all the way. You don't do it during the recon, you don't do it during the race, and you save it. And the prime example of this is of course Sven Hill during the 2002 World Championships in Zolder. He goes around the outside of a tree, which is in the middle of the course, so he gets to this hill first, all or nothing. He's built his entire race around it, went with a gear specifically able to ride it up that hill, and when Mario de Klerk was in his wheel, he had no idea what was happening. He needed to get off the bike and was running for his life, and Nijs was just putting down the power and making it to the top. He had no clue what was happening, he was panicking. He still won the race, so you can overcome it. But yeah, if you go all the way in, then you could do that. But then Pieterse maybe should also not upload her pre-ride videos on the day before the race, because she gives away a lot of details there, and I would assume that people of Powell South and other teams are watching these videos. They will now know that Pieterse is considering riding with a dropper seat post in Namur. That could have been a very big weapon that other teams didn't think about and that she could have used as an advantage. Maybe we will see other teams becoming awake now as well, and they will think, oh, dropper seat post, that's a good idea, I need to get one as well. Then she's also telling her tire pressure in that video, and for us it's super interesting. We get a super nice insight, but as you say, if you want to go all in for it and really have this winner-killer mentality, then maybe you should not give away these details and also try and play a big mind game and not hop them the entire weekend. Let's look at our entire top 10. We had an all-Dutch under-23 podium. Fem van Empel ahead of Pieterse and Shirin van Anrooy. Denise Betsma in 4th ahead of Catablanca Vash. Then Marianne Vos, the cyclocross world champion, in 6th ahead of Inge van der Heijden, Clara Honsinger, Celine del Carmen Alvarado and Lien Burquier. Let's go back to that top 3 for a very brief moment. Shirin van Anrooy. We already discussed that Joris Nieuwenhuis from the Baloise Trek team had a very good start to his season. Van Anrooy, who is on a similar program, is also finding the good form now with a 3rd place today. Were you surprised by that, or do you think that this is also a natural progression on her hand?
Well, I think a natural progression in a way. I think that if the road season was quite something for her as well. So I think that in the end it is also just probably took some rest, not a lot of training intensity. And now on the way back, and to be honest, I think even that is a bit earlier for me in a way. I think that I expected her to be in better shape going into November and in December, early December, to be actually really at the front fighting it out with the women at front. But it's promising for her. I'm interested to see on a different type of parcours how it will go for her. But I think that overall she will be going well from here out, and I don't see a real drop in form for her coming up for now, and it's definitely good for her because the championships are coming up.
Yeah, and let's not repeat the discussion we had after Tabor, but I will say it one time. Fem van Empel, Pieterse and Shirin van Anrooy should all take conclusions from this World Cup. They end 1, 2, 3, race the European Championships with the elites. There is no point in racing the under-23 race when you can all end on the podium of the women's elite race. Enough about that, let's talk about Marianne Vos, who started her cross season, her World Cup cross season here. 6th place. It's below my expectation. I had expected a bit more. Last year she did way better in her first race, winning in Waterloo. I do think it's a hard course to start your cross season on. It's super technical. It's really tough for a rider. It's maybe not the hardest race in terms of physique. It's not a Koppenberg or Namur like, but the corners, and it really requires a bit of rhythm. And we did see something of Vos on the broadcast, not that much to the corners, but I think that is ultimately where she is still lacking a bit of rhythm and maybe a little bit of form, but not too much conclusions. Interested on your thoughts on Marianne Vos.
I mean, I wouldn't say disappointing, but yeah, it was kind of below below my expectations in a way. I think that maybe we expected a little bit too much from her. But we also didn't want to look like fools, and and she ends up on the podium already at her first serious race in a way. But yeah, it's understandable. You big road campaign that she has behind her already. Now you have to come into the field. You could see, I mean, we couldn't, like you said, the broadcast was not really focused that much on her. There were some glimpses that we could see her, and it looked, in my opinion, just a lack of rhythm, and it had to come from quite deep in a way. I cannot remember what races was he last year. It was in the Netherlands, I think. Which one was it?
Probably Hulst. She didn't have a very great race there either.
Indeed. It looked like Hulst. It really looked like Hulst. It was like pushing and just not really fluid in a way. And we know, Vos is somebody right now that is more on the power as well because of the road and stuff. But it just looked a bit off. And yeah, we just have to wait and see. I think that she knows what she's doing. And at the moments that will matter, she will probably be there and fight for victory. But I think for now it's not a bad result. It's something you can live with, and you have to just try and improve from that.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you bring up Hulst, because I almost forgot about that race, but now you say it, the course also resembles Maasmechelen a lot. Just this constant corner to corner, banking to banking, off camber to off camber, steep bank up, corner, just so demanding from a rider. You can't lose your focus, and it really requires this feel with your cross bike, and maybe she doesn't have that yet. And yeah, I completely agree. It looks a lot like her situation in Hulst, so it's not a disappointing start to your World Cup season in any way. It's just that I had expected a bit more, so for my standards maybe disappointing, but that doesn't make it a bad result. 6th is it's a decent starting point. We'll see how she can move on from here, and maybe she's also done a hard week of training towards the European Championships. That's only something time will tell. I do still want to say that the 8th place of Clara Honsinger today was promising. Her start was also not disastrous. She was, I think, 17th going into the field and quickly up into 13th. 8th on a course that is, I think, at least one of the worst courses possible for her. And the same goes for Lynn Burquet, the French champion, 10th on a course that does not suit her at all. She's super good on the climbing courses where you really need power. She's super good on the mountain bike as well, and she's really a powerful rider. So I am not entirely surprised to see her in the top 10, but it's still very good. I don't think she's on the start for the Koppenberg Cross, which is a bit unfortunate, as I think she could do super well there. But next week in Namur, we'll definitely see what she's capable of on a course that should really suit her. On the mountain bike, she's had great battles with Pieterse in the under 23 category, so I'm interested to see what that brings. And then finally, Annemarie Worst, we mentioned her in the podcast yesterday that she didn't go too well. Today, she also didn't go too well. She ended 17th, which is definitely way below what she's capable of. Maybe an illness setting through, or maybe there was some incident. I'm not too sure, but she was running in the top 10 at some point in the race and made a drop to 17th. Then to round off this episode, I'll give you some results of the youth races. Men's under 23 race was won by Thibaut Nijsse ahead of Pim Ronhaar and Wietse Meeuwse in what looked to be a very entertaining and exciting race. The men's junior race was won by Guus van de Einde ahead of Leo Bissot and Victor van den Bergen. Eurocross rider Andrew August, who we followed last week in Tabor, ended 4th, which is the best result for an American junior in a World Cup since Gage Hecht ended 4th in Hogerheide 2016. And on the women juniors end, we saw Laura Molengraaf taking her second win ahead of Fleur Moors and Eva Holmgren. Finally, there was also racing in the UK. We had Thomas Mean taking the win in the men's elite race ahead of Jensen Young. The third place I do not know at the moment, as the race literally just finished. The women's race was won by Anna Kay ahead of Baker and Wijak. There was racing in Buhl, Switzerland, where Roulier took the win ahead of Laurijsen and Motjes. The women's race was won by Casasola ahead of Bramati and Schnellbij. And then finally, in the USA, there was also racing yesterday night, actually, that was for us. The Major Taylor Cross Cup, and Caleb Swartz, friend of the show, took the win. Congratulations, Caleb, ahead of Scott Funston and Scott McGill. The women's race was won by Hannah Arensman, ahead of Sunny Gilbert and Lizzie Gunsos. That was it then for the Maasmechelen World Cup. Issam, thank you again for being here.
Yes, no worries. Thank you for having me.
We will be back on Tuesday with a midweek episode about the Koppenberg Cross, and after that we are heading towards the European Championships in Namur. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. If you want to write to us, you can write to us at noah@cyclocross with 3 S's at the end.com. Hope to hear from some of you, and we will be back this week as said. Goodbye.